My 13-year-old brother leaves the house every night. When I found out why, I never looked at him the same. Every evening at 6 o'clock, straight after dinner, my brother who was 13 left the house and did not come back until well after midnight. He claimed to just be meeting friends. It was summer, so our parents did not mind. They were just glad that he had finally stopped playing Call of Duty with strangers on the internet and made some real-life friends instead. However, I had my suspicions. My brother had never exactly played well with others. A few years prior, he bit a boy at a birthday party. As his older sister, I felt protective and wanted to make sure he wasn't getting himself into trouble or wrapped up with the wrong crowd. I was only 2 years older than him, but I still felt it was my responsibility to look out for him. One evening, after he left, I asked my parents if they really thought he was just going to meet friends. They looked at each other and shrugged. Our father said we had no reason not to believe him. I said we should worry about what he was doing with these friends, if they even really existed. Our father sipped his tea and our mother put more bread into the toaster. Our mother then asked if I was jealous about my brother having friends. She claimed I wasn't exactly popular myself. She said I used to spend most of my spare time with my brother before he made his new friends. It was not true that I did not have many friends. I had lots of friends. But it was true that me and my brother spent a lot of time together. I loved him and he was my friend. To be honest, he was my best friend. But my interest in his new friends was honestly out of concern rather than jealousy. I considered my brother to be a very naive and innocent individual. He still believed wrestling was real for God's sake. I just had the sinking feeling that somebody was taking advantage of him or making him do really bad stuff. The following morning, I walked into his room as he slept and sat on the edge of his bed. I thought if I ambushed him early then he might part with the truth a bit more easily. I screamed and my brother sat sharply up as if he had just woken from a nightmare. I laughed and he called me a bitch while rubbing his eyes. I begged him to tell me where he went at night, and he fed me the same old BS friend's excuse. I said I did not believe him and was just being a good sister by trying to find out the truth. He said he did not need my help, protection or friendship. I stole the pillow from behind his back and started beating him over the head. This was an attempt at harassing him into telling me the truth. This attempt did not work. He fought back with a second pillow and quickly gained the upper hand. I fled from his room, and he slammed the door. He told me to mind my own business from the other side. That evening, I decided to follow my brother. Usually, I am an advocate for respecting someone's privacy, but this was about a family member's safety. As he walked up the driveway, I put on my jumper and pulled up the hood. My parents asked where I was going, and I said I was going to meet some friends. I had to be careful while following my brother. I stayed a safe distance behind and dropped down to tie my shoelaces the one time he looked back. When he walked into a small grocery store, I ducked behind a BMW and peeked over the side to watch him. He waited until the sole cashier turned around, then stuffed his pockets with candy and paste from the store. I expected an alarm to go off but only heard the nearby traffic and concluded my brother must have known the store was too cheap to have a proper security system. This was where I first started thinking my brother might be less innocent and naive than I originally thought. I continued following him until he reached a farm located 5 minutes outside of town. He knocked on the door and I crouched behind the ditch at the top of the thankfully short entrance road. A girl answered the door and pulled him straight into a hug followed by a sloppy kiss on the cheek. This girl was cute, and I was absolutely flabbergasted. I did not think my brother had reached the stage of liking girls. Just the previous week, he had fretted over the existence of cooties and laughed at the idea of hanging out with the girl who lived across the street. As I turned to go home and further contemplate the true reason for my brother's daily outings, the girl led him around the side of the 2-story farmhouse. Curiosity got the better of me and I prayed none of the girl's family were watching from the windows. I peeked around the corner of the house and saw my brother sitting with the girl on a garden bench. They ate the sweets he stole from the grocery store and told each other horrendously unfunny knock-knock jokes. Then the girl stood up from the bench and opened the back door of her house and a dog sprinted around the garden. The dog jumped onto my brother's lap, and he pushed him off. My brother never liked dogs. I heard the girl say she had been wanting to get rid of the dog for a long time. She said he belonged to her stepmother. My brother and the girl bent beside the dog and broke off little squares of chocolate from the jumbo-sized bar. They fed the chocolate squares to the dog while shooting each other mischievous smiles. I recalled all the times our parents told us never to feed chocolate to a dog due to its fatal effect. I sprinted away from the house, distraught that my previously sweet brother had turned into an animal-murdering monster. When I got back to our house, my parents immediately noticed my red eyes and asked me what was wrong. I didn't have the heart to tell them what their son had become. I had decided to deal with the problem on my own, but just didn't know how yet. I told them I had gotten into a fight with my friends and wanted to be left alone. I went to my room, got into bed and buried my face in my pillow. I was woken the following morning by my brother knocking on the door. He sat on the edge of my bed and sighed. Our parents had told him I was upset and sent him to comfort me. He asked me what happened and who were these supposed friends that had upset me. I sat up to yell at him and call him a murderer. I was about to call him all the nasty names under the sun, warning him to never go near that girl or her house again. Then I realized it was only going to drive him further into her psychotic grasp. I told my brother to mind his own business and leave me alone. He mumbled something about me getting more dramatic with every passing day and left my room. I came up with a plan to get my brother away from the bad influence farm girl without him ever knowing my input. Some internet research revealed it was only the girl, her father and her stepmother living at the house. The girl's name was Emer and I thought that was an ugly name. An hour later, I was back at the top of the Emer's laneway. I watched the house for 40 minutes, pondering the best way to execute my plan. Then her dad and stepmom got into their car. I pretended to be a stranger out for a stroll and waved as they drove past. When their car had turned the corner, I walked up the laneway and knocked on the door. Emer answered the door, and I walked straight past her into the living room. She asked me what the hell I thought I was doing, and I sat down on her couch. She threatened to call the police, and I said I would tell her father and stepmom the truth about the dog unless she did exactly what I said. I instructed the girl not to speak to my brother or even look in his direction again. I instructed her to block his number and ignore him if he ever approached her when school started back up. The girl nodded meekly and told me she was sorry for everything. She said the dog had bit her, and I said I did not believe her nor care. Back at my home, as I ate dinner with my family, I felt proud of myself. I had successfully looked out for my little brother. Us being able to be friends again was also a nice bonus. I imagined he would be heartbroken over losing the girl, but I knew it was for the best in the long term. Besides, he was 13. It couldn't have been anything more than puppy love. Then, after dinner, much to my confusion, my brother put on his coat and said he was off to meet his friends again. I chased him up the driveway and asked if he had heard from his friends today. My brother turned around and laughed in my face. Some of his spit landed on my nose. My brother said he no longer considered me his sister. He said it would be my word against his and the girls about what happened to the dog. He warned me to never go near her again or else I'd see a side of him that I would not like. I didn't know what to say. Ever since then, I looked at him with disgust, wondering how he could do the horrid things he was doing. He would leave at 6 o'clock for about the next 2 months almost every night, and my parents never suspected a thing. I decided to leave it alone because I actually feared him. If he had the heartlessness to kill that dog, who knows how dangerous he really could be. As soon as I left for college, I made a vow to myself that I would never try and see my brother again. I've stayed true to that, even if it means missing family events that he would be at. Sometimes my parents argue with me about not showing up, but I just tell them that my brother knows why, and you will just have to get it out of him. I don't think they actually have yet, or he probably would have tried to frame me for that thing he did so long ago. It frightens me that he could have done so much more by now, but I am not really afraid of him anymore. I have a big strong husband now that I feel can protect me and our 2-year-old. My sick brother is no match for him. When did jealousy get the best of your significant other? My husband got jealous because a customer with Down syndrome at my restaurant only wants me to serve him every day. It ruined my marriage. I have been married to my husband for about 2 years. Together for 5. We have 2 children, and I honestly couldn't be happier, until my husband found out about the customer. I run a cafe with my sister and it's located in a very popular neighborhood with lots of office workers. There's also some type of day center. This day center is for people with different kinds of disabilities. They do simpler types of work. There's a boy who is maybe 25 to 30 with Down syndrome that works there. Every morning, his taxi drops him off at 7:30 and he comes to our cafe and gets a breakfast and coffee and sits on the same table facing my workstation. He doesn't say much, just smiles and asks how I am today and what my plans are. He refuses when my sister or one of the girls helps him. It must be me. If I'm busy he waits until I'm available. Then he starts his day at 8. We close at 4 p.m. and at 3:30 p.m., he comes again and sits on the same table until his taxi comes around 4 and usually I give him a soda or a smoothie on the house. Apparently when I'm not working he gets very confused, stays for a while without understanding I'm not there and then leaves without eating. My sister and her wife were invited for dinner with me and my husband. I was homesick the week before so she was laughing and telling us about the boy and how he refused to be served by any other and just waited outside for me. My husband was confused so my sister explained everything about this customer. My husband was silent the rest of the dinner. When they went home he asked me why I never told him about this customer and that he thought that the guy was being disrespectful. He asked if he knew I was married. I was confused as to why he would say something like that. Then he became angry because I said that he had Down syndrome. He said that there are functioning people with this syndrome and that I was the prejudiced one, not him. I told him that I was aware of that, but this boy in question seemed and appeared to be much younger and when he started, one of the people working in the day center noticed his behavior and came to check if he was making us uncomfortable and explained that he had the mind of an 8-year-old and is creature of habit. At the time we told them that he was very polite and pleasant to have as a customer. My husband wasn't happy about it. Next week my husband showed up at 7:30 and took that exact table the boy usually takes. When he came he was very flustered and didn't know what to do so he just stood near my workstation with his sandwich and coffee in hand. I asked him if he wanted me to help him find another table but my husband was very angry and told the boy to respect me because I'm a married woman and to not come and stare at me again. The boy apologized and he just left and waited outside all confused. I was heartbroken and begged my husband to apologize and to leave the table because the boy is a creature of habit and doesn't really like changes. He said he didn't care because obviously he's in love with me. My sister told my husband about how I got a Valentine's card last year. When I got home my husband said that he makes good money and we don't need my income. He had contacted my sister to ask her to take over my share of the cafe because I didn't need to work. He said he was disappointed because I never told him about my customer or the card he gave me so I must have thought it was out of line. But it wasn't like that at all, it's just that I get hundreds of customers every day and I don't have to tell my husband about all of them. He said it wasn't the same as someone who's in love with me. Being in my cafe every day and sometimes when I'm alone. This infuriated me, but we somewhat made up, and I thought we would be okay. All that to say the next morning he was almost non-talkative to me. I asked him if he was still mad, and he said he just needed time to think about things. I had no idea what that meant, and I was still pissed at him because of his irrational thinking about this whole situation. Ever since that day, he hasn't really been the same. He doesn't do it all the time, but he will avoid me on certain days where I tell him about a funny story at the restaurant. The spark was slowly fading, and I didn't know what to do about it but resign from it. I had hoped that if I did that, he would be happy and we could move on from this whole stupid ordeal. When I told him the news, he acted happy, but it was obvious that he was faking it in some aspect. At this point, I'm starting to suspect that he is losing feelings for me, as he has seemed to have more frequent late nights at the office. If what I'm thinking he is doing is true, my heart is already shattered. Every time I try to talk to him, he just shuts me down with a lie about how he loves me and everything is fine. I can't make him budge, and I feel like I'm trapped in a hole with no way out. What should I do? When did you realize you married the wrong sibling? I thought we were happy, I thought we were in love. I have been married to my wife for 6 years. I'll call her Annie. Annie and I met during our last years in college and hit it off almost immediately. She was your typical blonde college girl, fun, wild, hot, and very social. I was just an international student from Europe who around that time was used to dull and introverted women all my life and felt very lucky to meet her and coincidentally after graduation, marry her. We moved to Miami because she wanted to live by the coast and wanted a house there. I obliged. Annie was a housewife, per her request, and I really didn't mind. As a lawyer, I earned more than enough to support the family on my own. I let Annie have whatever she wanted and at any amount she pleased. We had 2 children during our 6 years of marriage, and despite my working life, I contributed largely to their upbringing. She had a more social life than I did, but it was fine by me. All in all, we were alright. Everything was alright. That was what I thought. Things began to change when my wife began to get obsessed with her phone. Annie was always on her phone normally. I think she had an active social media life as well, posting videos and all that, but it began to be too much. She would just sit at a corner for hours on her phone, texting. I knew she was texting because I once caught a glance of it. I didn't know who she was texting, but I just knew it was always the same person. I didn't want to think much of it at first, but she began to act suspicious. She would start leaving the room when she wanted to take calls, and she put a password on all her devices and would always place her phone down when she charged it. When I made the mistake of confronting her about it, she went all out on me and accused me of getting in her privacy, of wanting to control her and picking on everything she does. I apologized and left her alone. My suspicions still stood, but I didn't have anyone to talk to and I was getting worried with every passing time. I've heard stories relating to what was happening and I wish that I was going to be wrong. A few days later, Annie's sister came to visit. I'll call her Marie. Annie and Marie were fraternal twins but did share similar traits for you to clearly tell that they were sisters. Though they were twins, they were very different, and sometimes I wonder if my life would have been better had I met Marie first. Marie was calm and mature, and she was as beautiful as her sister, and she was every other thing that Annie wasn't. She wasn't in a relationship from what I know and was focusing on her career. She was growing a skincare brand. It was because I knew her to be just and understanding that I thought about discussing her sister's behavior with her. I only held back when I remembered that all in all, Marie and Annie were sisters, and as such, there is a huge chance that this would make things worse for me. However, I did not need to contemplate any more because at the end of the day it was Marie who called me to talk about her sister. We had all been sitting at the dining room table drinking wine and eating pizza while playing a board game when Annie got a notification for a text, and from then on, she became distracted. Marie would call her back to the game every now and then. Annie got a call and stood up immediately to answer it, and I could tell that Marie was confused at her behavior because a few minutes later, when my wife did not return, Marie went to meet her and I sat alone till she came back. The first thing she asked was, "Has she always been like this? On the phone 24/7 and acting distracted and suspicious?" It was the opening I was looking for, and I told Marie everything. She didn't judge me and told me that I should look into it. She even told me whatever happened I should understand that Annie was always foolish and immature and I should always be the bigger and forgiving person. I understood what Marie was saying. If I found out that my wife was cheating on me, I should have it in me to forgive. I knew that Marie tried to talk to Annie, and I also knew that my wife did not listen. That was probably why Marie told me she would be coming often to check on the children, and I was grateful. It was stressful doing it alone nowadays. I continued to live in doubt for weeks until one night luck shined on my side. Annie, after coming home one night from a party with her girlfriends, was very drunk and half asleep as she walked into the house and threw herself on the bed. As she did, her purse fell on the floor, and as I went to pick it up, her phone slipped out and I saw that it was unlocked. This was my chance, and you can be sure that I took it. I went through her phone and what I found broke me. Annie was cheating, yes, but she was also making a fool out of me. The person she was cheating with was a man named Tim, someone she had met on social media, and from what I read, someone she had seen a number of times. Annie's messages to this man were not only about their affair but about me because the man knew she was married. My wife made fun of me with her lover, calling me all sorts of things, laughing at my insecurities and my deepest secrets that I entrusted to her. Annie called me a fool, mocked my love for her, and used me. I read every single message between them and listened to the voice notes too. When I was done, I sent them to my phone, dropped hers, and went to sit on the couch, in the darkness and in tears. I never imagined I would feel a pain as intense as this. I felt open, I felt naked, and I felt used. What was it exactly that caused this? I gave her everything she needed. I treated her like a queen. I did whatever she asked and compromised so that she could be comfortable. I loved her to bits, and she did this to me? I didn't know when I picked up the phone and called Marie. It was a good thing that Annie was dead-ass drunk, or she would have heard my sobs and words. Marie didn't say much. She listened to me and consoled me, telling me it would be okay. After an hour, I decided I was better. I took a shower and slept on the couch. The next day, when Annie asked why she didn't wake up to see me on the bed next to her, I gave her the excuse that I didn't want to disturb her. Later that afternoon, when she left for the mall, I took the kids with me to see Marie, and while they played with her dog, we talked and I showed her the messages I transferred to my phone. Marie was shocked and so embarrassed that she began to cry. She told me how sorry she was that all this was happening, and I began to tell her it's not her fault. She began to say that maybe it was a mistake. I haven't exactly caught Annie red-handed. I knew she was really concerned for her sister if I divorced her. She knew how I treated Annie and how Annie was about to lose it all. I told Marie to help me look after the children once in a while and I would look for proof. I also made Marie promise me that she would not tell Annie anything. I did just that. I would wait for Annie to leave her phone and then I connected it to mine so I got all her messages. The day she told me she would have a get-together with her girlfriends in the suburbs for 3 days, I agreed. I had already let go of any feelings for Annie at this point. She was a bad wife and an unfit mother who was never there with the kids. I knew the girlfriend's tale was a lie. She was going to meet with the Tim guy. I had asked Marie beforehand to help me get in contact with the man's wife after she said she saw his profile on Facebook. I texted the wife and we met up that day and I told and showed her everything. She said she already suspected it but had no proof. She said Tim told her he had to travel for business and would be back after 3 days. Ironic. After 2 days, when Annie was supposed to return the next day and after I found out the location of Annie and Tim, I dropped the kids off with Marie's mother and hopped in my car with Marie and Tim's wife, driving to the hotel where my wife and the bastard were. It wasn't very hard to bribe the receptionist after explaining our ordeal and get the key to the room. We all went to the door, Marie shaking, Tim's wife on the verge of tears and me. I felt nothing but disgust and seething anger. We walked in on them in the act and armed with my phone ready, I snapped away before they could cover themselves. Annie began to beg. Marie walked up to her and slapped her while crying. Why would you do this? You had everything. Look at what you've done to yourself and your kids. I left immediately with Marie, letting Tim's wife hit and yell at her unfaithful husband as she threatened divorce. I didn't bother to talk to Tim or Annie who begged me. I just left. We drove in silence till I got to my house. That's when I let it all out for the last time, screaming and crying in pain as Marie calmed me down. Once I was calm and with Marie watching, I sent the pictures and the chats to her mother and the contacts of the family members I knew. I also posted it on the timeline of every single page she had. Marie apologized as though it was her fault, the innocent woman crying over her foolish sister. I didn't leave the house even as Marie went to bring the kids back. Annie didn't come home either and there were a lot of messages on my phone from her family but I ignored it. That night, Marie and I slept together. No, we didn't actually hook up, but we fell asleep on the couch together after putting the kids to bed. There was no reason to and no thoughts about it but it was calming. The next day I contacted my lawyer to prepare the divorce papers. I had Annie's things moved to her parents' house. That afternoon she came begging and crying on her knees, blaming the devil, lust, Tim, anything but her. I threatened to call the police if she didn't leave. She didn't. She stayed there till evening when her parents came and used that opportunity to get in the house. They apologized on her behalf as well, but it wasn't their fault. They understood my decision to leave her and begged that they be able to see their grandchildren when everything was over. They were very disappointed in Annie, everyone was. When Annie saw Marie in the house, she began to say it was all her sister's plan from the beginning. That Marie wanted to take me away from her. That was the second time Marie slapped her, telling her if she had been a fit mother she wouldn't have to be here and her marriage to me would have been fine but Annie chose to mess around. I threw her out of my house eventually. I didn't care where she went. The divorce happened and like the court ordered, I split everything in half and gave half to her. I moved with Marie for a while as per her request as I searched for a house, possibly in another state. Thankfully the kids did not miss a mother that was never there. They were too young anyway, they felt better being with their Aunt Marie. Things settled after a few months and I was on my feet again, mentally. I didn't care where or what Annie did and I haven't seen her since but the times I did, she would burst into tears begging me. Marie, like I said, was an amazing woman and just what I needed in my life. She brought me peace and healed me and after 2 years we were together, then engaged and about to get married. She has been the best thing that has ever happened to me. Even though I was in an insane amount of time, I can't help but look back on what happened as a good thing, because I would never meet the actual true love of my life.